Alright, so I'm finally getting around to starting work on this lawn tractor that got out of the garbage, I don't know, a few weeks ago maybe. This is the one that me and my buddy picked up that they had thrown out to the curb with a push mower. And I already fixed and sold the push mower, so this is naturally the last bit of that. So I've got a new drive belt, and in order to install this, I'm going to have to pull the deck off, which isn't really that big of a deal, to be honest. It's just a few cotter pins that usually hold these things up. Kind of see a couple of them right there. And on these John Deeres, they're actually fairly easy to remove, but I'm not going to really do anything with this deck, at least until I can kind of figure out whether this mower is going to be salvageable or not. The motor in this runs. If you guys care enough, you could see that in the other video that was done on this thing. It seems to run okay. I took the battery out of this and put it on a trickle charger. It seems to be holding charge now just fine. The tank is going to need to be replaced at some point. Yeah, these things are never really made all that well. Those original tanks, they just the sun and the heat destroys them over time. But the Achilles heel of these lawn tractors are the transmissions. It's got a hydrostatic transmission, and they're just known to not be all that solid. Now, if you're using the lawn tractor on flat land, flat surface, and there's no real hills for it to go over, you should be okay, because what kills these things very quickly is any sort of hilly terrain. So, reason being we're starting with the drive belt first is because, as you guys will probably see when I lift this thing up, you can see what kind of shape that drive belt is in. I do believe it's slipping. I don't think it's getting enough traction to spin the transmission enough to get the proper amount of pressure. So when I was driving this thing around, it didn't really want to do reverse all that well, and it felt like it should be going a lot faster and forward. But anyways, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to pull the deck off, and then we'll flip this thing over. Well, so here it is flipped over, and true to form, not everything is as easy as it sounds when you first start getting into something. But I ended up having to remove this bracket here, this guard for the fan pulley for the transmission. I had to take a pulley off of the tensioner unit for the belt, and then I had to also take off this belt guard right there, and I had to use my trusty electric impact. But aside from all of that, we're just about to remove this old one. And, you know, unfortunately, I'm not really seeing too much damage with this. So I hate to say it, but it might be the transmission that's worn out on this thing after all. But I'm not going to write it off just yet, at least not until I get the new belt on it. And even if the transmission is shot, done on this thing, you know, there are still bits and pieces off of this thing I could use and sell. I mean, the motor itself, I've sold, I don't know if you guys remember it, but that Toro Rider that I sold that motor all in on eBay for about $300. I think the end price was like $240, and the guy paid $60 to get it shipped to him. So, believe me when I say this, I can still make money off of this thing. But let's go ahead and get the new belt on, and hopefully we'll be on our way. And the new belt is on. So, just throw this locking nut back on, and we're just about there. So I just have to start putting everything back together, and I'm actually going to clean out the frame rails too. They got a bunch of crap and, you know, all sorts of different stuff in them. But almost there. So just put the battery in it, got everything reconnected on the bottom, flip the tractor over, reconnected the starter. So it still doesn't rotor want to move. Just making sure it didn't throw the belt off. Belt's still on. You guys can't really see that, but everything's on fine. So there's really only other possibility here. Well, there's technically two. If there's a way to adjust these, meaning how much the throttle pedal, well, the forward and reverse pedal, actuates that little lever down here, that might be what's causing our issue. Or this transmission might be low on fluid. I'm going to have to check it over a little bit more, but as I said earlier, this motor runs pretty good. So I'm not really all that worried about this if I can't get it going 100%, because I can still take this motor off and sell it. Well, so the deck itself seems to be in okay shape, so I'm probably going to end up saving this, and I might put that up on Craigslist and see if I could even sell it. I've never actually tried to sell a lawnmower deck before, but you know, I don't see any reason why this one shouldn't be able to sell. It's just missing some paint on it. I haven't checked the blades yet, but anyways, as far as this hunk of junk goes, it figures. But now the battery itself is not holding any charge, so the battery needs to be replaced. You know, one more thing that needs to be done, and I think, unfortunately, just because, as I've said in the past, the nature of these things, I don't think this thing's going to be worth fixing. I really don't. And you know, I might be lucky to get $500 for this thing, maybe, provided the deck works fine and I can get everything back together. And you know, it doesn't need anything else other than a transmission rebuild and new battery and a tune-up, which I'm already right around the $500 mark anyways, because that transmission, provided I can even get the kit and parts to rebuild it, I've seen the rebuild parts for those total up to about $350 to $400, depending on where you go. So I'm not really too sure, but I'm kind of leaning towards that I'm just going to scrap this and pull the motor off of it and sell it on eBay. And of course, in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to you know, more or less clean this thing up, take some pictures, pull the motor out and put it up. And I'm sure it'll sell. I don't see why it wouldn't, but it is, you know, it is a little bit of a pain in the ass to sell it on eBay. But other than that, boys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you've got any comments, go ahead and leave them. But I mean, I think short of being able to adjust the linkage for that transmission, or maybe even check and see if there's full fluid in it, I don't think there's really much more I can do to it short of rebuilding it. So stay tuned for more. You all stay classy.